This is the Motivated Business Show, hosted by me, Mark Terrell, the author of Motivated, the Reluctant Leader's Guide to Building a Business that Sets You Free. In my book, I share the 7-step process to get the measure of your business. M.E.A.S.U.R.E is an acronym that stands for Mirror, Evaluate, Action, Systemize, Unify, Review, and Energize. On each episode, I'll be chatting to a business owner about how they stay motivated and how they've got the measure of their business. So without further ado, let's find out who's joining me on this episode. Hello and welcome to this episode of the Motivated Business Show with me, Mark Terrell. And today's guest, I've just been having a chat with him. I've never met him, although we had a little bit of a chat before a while back about what we were going to talk about. But I've just had a really interesting conversation with regards to how he's got to where he is today and what he does. And I think it's going to be really interesting with all the things that he's doing with regards to social media and personal branding. But before we get stuck into that, let's remind you that what I want to talk about is, firstly, I wrote a book and I will be referring to the 7-step process that I wrote about in that book. There's a chapter for each of the 7 steps, plus 2 other chapters as well about looking after yourself and enjoying the journey. So you can get that book either from myself directly or from the Amazon route, and you can also get the Kindle version if you go to Amazon. If you'd like to contribute to the podcast, any contributions are gratefully received, and you can do that by clicking through to my Buy Me a Coffee link. And if you feel that you want to buy me 2 coffees, then as a thank you, I will send you a copy of my book as a thank you for that. So any contributions with regard to that is well received and keeps the wheels running with regards to the podcast. So thank you for those that have done that already. Right, let's bring on our guest for today. Welcome, Anthony.
Hey, Mark. So excited to be here.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to the conversation. But before we get stuck into that, let's give you the opportunity to introduce yourself properly.
Hey guys, my name is Anthony, and in my previous life, before doing my own business, I was doing social media for brands like Just Eat and Pret. And then during the pandemic, I was like, I'll just do my own thing. So looked at the opportunities around, and I see, just personal branding, social media, and LinkedIn. That's a space that I feel like I can really contribute to. So this is where I'm at now, is to help business leaders and anyone who wants to be more visible in their industry, to use personal branding, social media, and LinkedIn to be at the forefront of their industry. So really excited to be talking here.
Interesting, yeah, it's going to be really interesting. And I'm going to pick up one thing you've already said there, and it's about visibility. So I think one thing we should think about and talk about is what stops people from being visible. I guess one of the reasons is they don't want to be, for some reason, want to be noticed, which is a little bit of an oxymoron. But what do you see as the biggest obstacles with regards to visibility?
I think everybody deep down wants to be visible, regardless. And we can go all the way back to, even if you're a junior staff member, you want to be visible in your own team, in your own company. If you're a business leader, you want to be visible in your industry. We're always constantly want to be visible, but I feel like what stops a lot of us is a bit of confidence. Actually, it comes down to that, because I can talk to somebody again, an intern, all the way up to CEOs and CMOs. They'll always come down to a point where they go, "Oh, I don't know if my story is worthwhile telling. Like, what can I post that people are interested in?" I'm like, that's crazy. That's your experience, your journey is unique to yourself, and the things you learn is actually applicable and also valuable to other people. But until I guess you kind of do the exercise of mapping out what your story is and knowing what the value is that you're offering to people through telling your story, it's hard to sit down in front of a computer to write a post or a blog post or to do a video, because that self-doubt kind of just eats at you, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I just find it crazy that doubt actually sits in from everybody from the bottom to the top of the food chain, so to speak.
Yeah.
So I feel like that's what holds a lot of us back. And a
Yeah.
lot of us holds and not that confidence comes from a few things. One, that the not knowing what to say, the fear of being judged actually is something that you wrote a book, and I feel like that's also it's a huge step, right?
Hmm.
And I think a lot of people don't write books because of very similar reasons, because it's like, what if people read this and they have like an opinion that's different to mine, and what if they publicly blast me for it? It's like, no, just if you're confident in what you're offering, in your story, in your journey, learn how to tell it well, right? If it's in a book form, write a book. If it's on LinkedIn, do a LinkedIn post. If it's on TikTok, learn how to do TikTok well. And if you can have confidence in your story and confidence in how you're telling the story, you're going to see a massive difference.
Yeah, I guess this is, and this links in really nicely, I guess, with regards to personal branding, and your story is the key to that, isn't it? Understanding why you do what you do, and what was the catalyst to make you do what you wanted, what you're doing at the moment. That's always an interesting conversation I have with anybody, whether they're whether they're setting up a business or actually whether they're actually in an organisation. There's always something behind what they do. And so, what is it that actually drove you to do what you do? Because that's be an interesting insight, I think.
Yeah, I mean, in my intro, I've been in social media for like 13 years now. I've done it for. It actually started off in the charity sector. I accidentally fell into the charity sector and did online stuff for Bernardo's, and then strictly social media for Save the Children. And then I moved into the commercial sector, and then I started doing it for Just Eat and Pret, those guys.
Hmm.
And throughout all those experiences, it's always been about feeling the impact that you have on your storytelling, letting the other side connect with you as either a charity, a cause, or a business. And what I've noticed is that uh, the connection rarely comes from when you're trying to sell your product, so to speak, right? Trying to say like, "Oh, buy this, buy that," and it's like, well, guys, if it's a sandwich shop, which I've done, it's like I already know what you sell. Like that's why I came in here for.
Hmm.
But when you're building a brand and when you're storytelling, it's often the things, to your point, the drivers, the things that, what I call, like, it's like values are beyond a transactional relationship. That's what connects, right?
Yeah.
That's what people pay attention to. If all I posted was like, I'm gonna help you do your LinkedIn post and I'm gonna help you do, like, that's fine. But what people connect to with me is what we just talked about. It's like the ways that I call, not had to face my own fears, public speaking, posting my own thing. Um, I How I help people do that, how I help people kind of discover their values.
Hmm.
And I think that's and what drives me, right? And ultimately, what drives me is to I love it when my clients, like, I see their eyes open and they're like, whoa, we can do this. Like, whoa, they're actually, I'm posting things now and people are actually connecting with me in a way where it's meaningful. um, that's what drives me now, is seeing that, right.
Mm.
uh, and yeah, I think that's why I love the name of the show, the Motivated Business Show. It's like that's what I'm here for, is to find the people that and connect with the people that, like, let's all be motivated together. We want to help each other get there. And so that's a major driver for me, is to see other people use a thing that they were previously afraid of, and now they're like, oh, cool, this is great. This is helping me, not just in my business, but also in my personal development as well. So
Right. Yeah. Absolutely. So you mentioned a few things we've talked about already with regards to people wanting to be noticed, and they want to be recognised. So when people post something on any social media, then the first thing they're looking for is some sort of recognition that someone's seen it. So there's various things. We know the algorithm will tell us how many impressions there's been, but also we all sort of hang on that sort of likes and shares and comments, doesn't it? So what's your how do you sort of manage that with your clients with regards to not making it all about that? Because if we hang on the likes and comments and all the other things that we want and we don't get them, then that could be quite demoralizing, can't it?
Well, that comes from knowing your story and being confident with it. Because if you know your story and you're like, this is important to me to tell, right? Then the likes and the comments are a symptom. It's no longer a validation of your story. It's a validation of how you tell your story. I think that mindset is very different, and it's very freeing actually, because yeah, again, to your point, it's like when I especially when you're like, I spent 4 hours on this post, I want someone just to like it, like please like it. And when no one does, you're like, am I not worth, do I not have something interesting to say? The truth is you have something incredibly interesting to say that you spent 4 hours writing. The problem isn't what you have to say, the problem is how you told it, right? And so when you can separate the two, all of a sudden you see those stats a little differently, right? Because I think the engagement is actually incredibly important to how far your post can go, right?
Yeah.
You can have a post that says the exact same thing, but because it's edited differently, one can have 300 reach, the other can have 1,000 reach, and I've seen that with my own content, right?
Yeah.
And yeah, so especially in the beginning, don't get too hung up on the likes and the comments and the stats. What you should be hung up on is how to tell your story and identify that. That's the first step I do with my clients is I go through what I call like a starter kit with them, and I ask them questions about who they are, why they started a business, what gets them out of bed, right? A lot of these things, a lot of people don't think about when they're posting for their own personal brand, because we're all wired to go, what's going to get my next sale, or what's going to get, how is it going to further my business or career? But in actuality, it's those values that's going to connect people so you can tell those other stories. And so you got to surface those, you got to be confident with those. And then we start looking at the content that comes from there. And then the stats now have meaning, because we're no longer using those stats to validate your story. We're using those stats to go, well, can we tell the story better next time? Um, and um, and that's what all the algorithms I feel like are leaning towards direction. I think that's the effect that TikTok has had, actually.
Right. Yeah. Yeah.
Ironically, it's currently going through a process of maybe being banned in America. We don't know.
We don't know now.
But it's the power of that form of algorithm has transformed all the social media platforms. No
Yeah.
longer is it that you have to have a big audience to get your content seen or your voice heard. It's if you have a good story, if you told it well, then it'll be rewarded with reach.
Yeah.
And I think that's incredibly powerful, right? I've got clients who's got 2,000 followers at posts that got 10,000 impressions, and it's not because of some magic hack. It's exactly what we said. It's
Yeah.
knowing that story and telling it well, and that's the
Yeah.
combination of that.
It's interesting, isn't it? You mentioned TikTok, but I think all the other social medias are learning from TikTok, being that there's short versions, isn't there? So a lot of people I've noticed are starting doing short clips, which then lead to the whole podcast or whatever. So it's like almost sort of a lead in, isn't it? So this is a little snippet, and if you want the whole lot, then it's almost like people want to get a feel for what they're actually going to commit to them their half an hour or so, or whatever it is the podcast is going to be on for.
Well,
Um,
that's exactly it, right? You brought up LinkedIn, and the average time spent on LinkedIn is like 7 minutes and 38 seconds, right?
right.
So, and that's just not on one post, or it's on all the posts. And so they need to be sold in a way that this thing that they just saw from Mark Terrell is
Yeah.
worthwhile watching or reading, right? Because if it's not, then I know I'm going to keep scrolling and something else will, right? And
Yeah.
so that's why your first two lines of your posts That's why your first 2 seconds of your video, that's why your image is so important, because it's
Yeah.
like a book of a cover, right? It's like it's got to be able to, if someone who doesn't know me or know what I stand for, also can see that and go, that's worthwhile staying a little longer for, right? I want to
Yeah.
see what goes on there, right? So
I did a post once, and I took a photograph of. I was at a bus stop, and I just took a photograph of the, the sign telling me when the bus was going to arrive. And then I did a post about, I like using public transport because I know everyone on the bus will be on their own journey, going different places. But ultimately, we were on our own journey, and I can't remember exactly what I said after that. But that got a massive amount of engagement and impressions, just because it was just something that people could relate to, I suppose. And that's the important thing, is being relatable, isn't it? Because they want to know, well, what are you about? People don't really want to be preached to. Once they then connected to you, then they might go a bit deeper, and that's where long form content can then sort of back up short form content. I'm guessing.
that's
Yeah.
exactly it. If you think about how we build relationships or buy anything, it's the trust and relationship that comes first, right? Just because someone's screaming like, "Oh, here's 9 steps to blah blah blah," doesn't mean that I'll be buying that thing. If it's someone that I trust and have a relationship with, that's telling me these 9 things, is different, right? And so that's why I feel like that kind of short form content does, is that it's builds that trust and relationship. So key to selling, so key to brand building, so key to marketing, so key to anyone's business.
Yeah.
And I think that sometimes gets lost when we're all looking at our personal branding and going, what can we do to get the most impressions or whatever. It's like the goal isn't impressions. The goal is trust. The goal is relationships.
So that's a good segue into what the next thing I was going to ask you about, with regards to something I saw you post the other day, and that was about, you talked about thought leadership versus community leadership. Now, you were talking about the most important thing, or is to focus on the community leadership. So, do you want to give us a bit more information about what you see community leadership is all about?
Yeah, I think again, I don't know who wrote the book on on LinkedIn or personal branding, but a lot of times when we think about these terms, right, we immediately think, oh, I gotta write a 5,000 word essay on this topic, and I need to be seen as a thought leader, and I I think that back in the day, and back in the day I mean probably about a year ago, uh, we're able to kind of use a lot of that content to build personal brands, because that's okay. But um, I think with the advancement of AI, that makes it incredibly hard to just build a brand on, because technically I can ask AI to write something about a subject I have no idea about. Like I could probably write you 4,000 words right now on how the best weather conditions to farm carrots in. I have no idea what where does to even start with that. But I have a tool right now that can fake my way to it, right? And so I
Yeah.
think as more and more people are going to try and basically cheat their way into becoming a thought leader, becoming creating something that seemingly is worth value, and more people do that, as we get saturated with that in our feeds and with what we read, it becomes really hard to trust a piece of expert content on face value. If I don't know you, if I don't have that trust and relationship with you, and so I feel like that thought leadership without what I call community leadership is going to be hard to sell to people. Community leadership is what we already do as business leaders, right? We don't lead a business by sitting behind a computer and writing 5,000 word essays. We do that by building relationships with people. We go to clients, we see them, we have a laugh, right? We share things, we go to different events together, and so those are all stories that are that kind of validates the impact you have with your community, the impact you have with your industry, that AI can't replicate. They can't fake that. They can't fake the energy you bring to the room. They can't fake the fact that you spoke at an event, and that you had great responses and great conversations, right? And so that I feel like is an increasingly important part of content. Whether you do it on LinkedIn, whether you do it
Mm,
on TikTok, whether you do it on Instagram, I don't even where else, wherever else you do it, emails, doesn't matter. That's a part of the story that needs to be told.
mm.
And I think that that's not being spoken enough.
Yeah.
Um,
I saw someone actually post the other day said that they're going to do more videos because when you do a video, I'm assuming this is the case because I don't know much about AI. There's more chance that you actually are going to be authentic because they see your mouth moving as opposed to just writing. Because let's face it, as we've just alluded to, AI can do a lot of the things that we used to do a lot quicker. And so, if that's the case, then people are going to use it more and more, and there's going to be more and more stuff shared, and the posts are going to be more and more AI generated. So, when you go to what I think what you're saying is to really connect with your community, you have got to be authentic and get your message over authentically, so it's not seen as just something that anybody else can do.
Yeah, and the authenticity comes from the relationship, telling the relationships that you're building, telling the impact you're having, right? It doesn't always have to be video. I think, I mean, AI videos come a long way as well,
Mm.
uh, and it's in the next year. I suspect we're going to look at it, and our jaw is going to drop even further from what it's going to about to do.
Yeah.
But um, but I always think that if you're going to events or if you're seeing a client, ask for permission to take pictures, selfies. Make sure you're a part of that story.
Mm.
If you have those assets, you can tell those stories. Without those assets, you can't tell those stories. And so don't be shy.
Mm.
Grab as much assets as you can, visual assets as you can. That helps tell that story.
Yeah.
If you're comfortable with video, great. If you're not, take a picture, right? Don't think too hard about like, oh, AI could replicate this. Like, just do it, right?
Mm.
Because right now, the fact that you're showing up is important, right?
Yeah.
And the fact that you're showing up as you is important because that's what's going to trump all those people that are just faking it with AI.
Yeah, 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 and that's an important message there, not to get hung up about it. Because that reminds me, actually, I was at an event a couple of days ago. Are you familiar with the guy called Levi Roots?
Yes,
Yeah.
yes.
So he was famous because he went on Dragon's Den, and he shared the story of when he was going on there. When he was telling all his friends and family. So his friends and family were telling, "Oh, yeah, well, yeah, do that. Talk about your business, but for goodness' sake, don't take your guitar." But we know that the reason why he was successful is because he was noted because he actually come into the den singing his song about his reggae sauce. And who knows what might have happened if he didn't do that, but essentially that was the thing that really sparked everybody's interest, and I'm sure that had a lot to do with the investment he got from the two dragons. And he talked about the importance of the one thing that, well, there was lots of things he talked about, but the one key thing that I came away from his talk was be authentic and be yourself. Don't try to be anybody else apart from yourself. And I guess that's what you tell your clients, isn't it?
Yeah, that's what we try to surface. It's like if that what a great illustration. I might have to steal that, Mark. But that's exactly it. It's like you see, and I think that's what happens when you fire up Instagram or TikTok or LinkedIn for the first time, and you're seeing all these people on TikTok. You're like, oh, they're all dancing or they're all cooking something.
Mm,
On LinkedIn, you're like, oh my gosh, these guys are so loud and so always selling something. Do I have to be like this? And that's, I suppose, back to your first question, was like that actually is some of the things that hold us back. It's like I don't want to be this thing that I don't that's looks successful, but the truth is it's they're successful and they sound like that because they figured out their story and how to tell it. Now let's figure out what your story is and how to tell your story because it's unique, right,
mhm,
to you. If I want to relate back to experiences I've had doing social media for brands, that was a big culture shock when I moved over to Pret and did their content for the first time because previous to that I was doing a lot of newsjacking. And that was successful. Just being humorous in kind of cultural events through social media. Great. Pret then said, no, we didn't want any of that. We have a story to tell. We care about our ingredients. We care about our people. We care about the homeless. Those are the stories I want to tell about. And it took my brain some serious rewiring to go from, oh, let's do, newsjacking to, right, let's tell that story. um, and I felt that firsthand. That's where I learned it from. Is I felt that firsthand, that if you can just be very confident about your story and tell that, that's going to be better than any algorithm hack or any cheat that you see on online. um, because if you've done something with meaning, if you've done something with motivation, that's going to connect, and it's going to be connecting in ways that you don't expect to. So I think that, and with people you want to connect with, actually, I think that's actually
Yeah, well, I was going to say what you've described there is values of the business, isn't it? And that's the important thing. Is that if we see something that is completely opposite to what we'd expect, then it actually just blows our sort of perception of the company. So it's important to make sure those values that are being actually portrayed in our marketing, which you talked about a big multinational corporation there, but when it comes to ourselves, who are working for ourselves, then it's just as important. It's to making sure we're consistent, we have a clear message, and actually the things that we do are in line with our values.
100%. You're so much more likely to work with somebody you connect with, right? And you're so much more likely to work with somebody who's on the same lane with you. If you care deeply about the environment, you're gonna connect with somebody who has the same values, and you're gonna choose to work with somebody that leans the same way as well. And so I feel like we do ourselves a disservice by not opening up our values to the to our stories, to our content.
Yeah.
And to your point, that's what's going to connect people to you, and get you business, get you trust, get you those relationships.
Yeah, brilliant. Right, Anthony, I'm going to let you to sit back for a little while. I'm just going to talk about the 7-step model, as I alluded to at the beginning of the podcast. So this is the 7-step model, and what I tend to do on the podcast is just to connect with what we've been talking about with regards to where it sort of fits in with regards to the 7 steps. So the 7 steps always start here, understanding yourself. So if you are having trouble with regards to that personal branding thing, I would suggest maybe you just need to understand yourself a bit better. And there's lots of ways you can do that. You can understand your personality style, you can find your motivations, you can find your character strengths. That's a great way to start with regards to understanding yourself. And it might actually, sometimes the biggest learning with these things is the things that are come up as your weakness. So definitely with regards to motivation, I'm going to talk about motivation in a little bit, but with regards to wanting to do something, because motivation is the reason we do something. And if we are holding back from doing the things that our business needs, and what does our business need? It needs to be marketed. You need to make sure that you're getting noticed. And this is what Anthony can help you with. Then what's stopping you? So yes, you can get some help from Anthony. I highly recommend get some support with regards to a coach. But also, what you've got to do is go deep and say to yourself, well, what is the barrier within me that's actually preventing me doing the things that maybe someone's telling me to do? And that's where motivation fits in. So understanding yourself is key. Evaluation is also important with regards to stepping into the evaluating, well, what am I going to do? What am I going to deliver? What is the problem I'm going to solve? And that could be linked to your motivations with regards to what you've experienced. I think most people I talk to, when they set up a business, it's to solve a problem that they've already overcome, so they want to help more people overcome that problem, or it's something they've definitely experienced themselves. So evaluation is a key step here, and all the other steps are important, but as we go on, we've got to try things out, and then we've got to systemize them as in we realize that they're vital for our business. But I mentioned about motivation, so this is the 9 motivations to work according to the motivational map model, and I'm just going to highlight 1 or 2. So here's the star motivator. So you'll see it's one of the relationship motivators. We have all 9 motivators within our psyche, so we need all 9, but we need them in different amounts. And so what I find quite often is that, especially solopreneurs, people that set up on their own, when they have a low star motivation, that basically tells me they're not really wanting to promote themselves and seek, as it says there, recognition. So that's a big indication that they need more help with regards to getting out of their way, with regards to getting noticed, potentially if you want to get noticed on maybe social media, etc. And also, I think it's worth mentioning what I see as the expert sometimes can get in our way. So when we are an expert in something, sometimes we know too much and we assume people know things that we know. So one of the things that I have to help my clients with sometimes is actually say, well, actually, I don't think many people do know that, and I think you need to talk more about that, because I think you're taking that as something that you take for granted, but actually it's not in most cases. So there we are, just a little bit of a look into the 7 steps, and particularly motivation in this case. Any comments you've got to make on what I've just said, Anthony?
No, your last part actually is so key, because it's experienced by everybody across any industry, because we're so knee deep in what we know, and we're always surrounded by people who are also knee deep in what we all know, and we forget that we are amazing. We forget that what we have to offer is stupendous, and it's beyond what and somebody else needs that, and the key is to be able to be a good communicator of that, right? And that's when people start connecting you. So that last point, I throw all the stars at. So
Thank you. Great. Well, unfortunately, the time has run out, Anthony. I'd just like to thank you for your time today. It's been really interesting talking to you. 30 minutes is never enough, but thank you for your time, and hopefully we can catch up again very soon.
Thanks for having me, Mark.
So there we are. There's Anthony. He's got lots to offer, and he's got a lot of passion for what he does, as you can see. So if you're struggling with anything that we talked about, then have a word with Anthony and see how he can help you. Just before we go then, just to remind you, my book, as I mentioned, the 7 steps process is in that book. And if you'd like to get a copy of that book, as I alluded to at the beginning of the show, if you buy me 2 coffees, I will send you a copy, and as a thank you for firstly contributing to the show, and also hopefully you'll get some value from understanding the 7-step process and how you can, as it says, create a business that sets you free. And essentially that's what it's all about. Right, so there we are. Thank you for those that joined us live, and if you catch us on replay, please don't hesitate to leave us any comments. If you've got any questions for myself or for Anthony, we're more than happy to answer them. Make sure we're tagged, and we'll make sure that we get back to you as soon as we can. But until the next episode, take care, and we will see you very soon on the next episode of the Motivated Business Show.